Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Intelligently Incompetent Podcast. I'm here again today with Nathan, although this time we're going to talk about something a little bit different. Instead, we're going to talk about respect in public and in the actions that you have, as well as acts of kindness and all that. So to start off, I'm going to kind of talk about a couple of people that happened. This is a story that happened today. So it started off, I went out to run some errands earlier today, and our neighbors were throwing a party or birthday party for one of their kids. Now they don't really have anything to do with it. It's just the fact that this party's going on, which is what caused us to run into this pair of people. So we were coming back from running our errands, and we came down our street, and there was a minivan who, in relation, I'm going to actually give a little bit of background before I go into the story. So outside of our house and literally the corner of our property, in front of our house, there's our driveway, and then there's one space for a car on the side of the street, and that's pretty much the width of our property. Now on the side opposite from our driveway, there's a fire hydrant, and there has been an incident before where a car was too afraid of getting a ticket from being in the yellow for that fire hydrant that they're actually blocking our driveway, and we had to call a tow truck to come so that way we could leave and go do what we were going to do, even though it still made us about an hour late than what we wanted to. But so today we were coming back from these errands, and our street's kind of thin to where two cars can get past if they're going, but you kind of have to go slow, and they pass kind of close. So we were coming in from the side of where our neighbor's house was, so we have to go past our neighbor's house who was throwing the party to get to our house. And so this minivan was dropping off one of their kids to go in the party, and like a good parent, they were waiting to drive off until their kid had made it in, which is nothing against them. And honestly, this driver didn't really do anything wrong. It was just a little bit of confusion. So we were coming up, and they saw that we were coming behind them, so they kind of pulled forward and got off to the side of the road. And in doing so, they didn't understand, because all they knew is that we were a car that was coming to try and get past them. So they pulled over, and they were kind of half blocking our driveway, and which, I mean, they didn't do anything wrong. Again, they were trying to get out of our way so we can continue down the street. But so they kind of pulled in front of our driveway, so we stopped there, put on our turn signal, kind of tapped the horn a little bit. And once they realized we were pulling in the driveway, they rolled forward enough to where we could get in. And so that was nice. It was just a little misunderstanding, nothing really wrong there. And so we pulled in, parked, got out, went inside. The van had taken off, and before we even finished setting stuff down, another silver car pulls up, and this older man, probably mid-40s, early 50s, he pulls up into the front parking spot in front of our house, which was empty at the time, and he starts to roll backwards. And I'm watching him as soon as he pulls up, just because the front door was still open. We were still setting everything down and settling in. And so I'm watching out the front door. He pulls up into the spot. He looks all right, and then he starts rolling backwards. And so I figured he was trying to get closer to the curb, because he was rolling back in front of our driveway. So I figured he was just trying to get closer to the curb, and he'd roll up again. And so once he gets about half of his car in front of our driveway and half of his car into the parking spot in front of our house, he then puts his car in park, turns it off, and gets out to take a present to the house next door. And once I realized that he just parked half blocking our driveway, I step out onto a porch, and I yell over to him, and it's like, hey, there's a whole parking spot there, right? And he just kind of looks at me confused, and it's like, there's no need for you to be blocking our driveway. And so then he turns and shouts back, and because it was kind of a little ways away, so he wasn't shouting to be like angry. He was just kind of shouting so that I could hear him. And he said, it's like, well, are you leaving soon? And I responded to him, what does it matter? It's still rude. And so he just kind of put his head down a little bit. He's like, okay, sorry, and then continued on, dropped off the present, went back and got in his car and left. Now, it's kind of goes into the whole respect thing. There was a entire parking spot that was plenty big enough for his car in front of our house, but yet he still chose to block our driveway just so that way he could be, I don't know, 3 feet closer to where he was walking to. I mean, yeah, he was only going to be there for a second, but what if the driveway was empty and the car right behind him was going to park in that driveway? And then they couldn't because he's got the ass end of his car stuck in front of that driveway. And so it's just kind of one of those things, like, you can walk a little bit farther to not inconvenience other people that you don't need to. So now on a more positive end, I'm going to swing back to a story that actually happened to me last night. So this, not even 24 hours before this whole incident occurred. I was with a group of my friends at hanging out over at the levee, and we decided to go ahead and go eat at Dick's Last Resort, considering that some of them hadn't gone before and they were really interested. For those of you that don't know, Dick's Last Resort is a restaurant where the waitresses are rude. And that's their whole gimmick. They poke fun at you, they kind of make jokes, but it's all just kind of part of their advertising scheme and what the restaurant's about, so none of it's really meant to be hurtful. And at this particular location, they don't have individual tables. It's kind of like community style dining where you'll sit literally across the table or next to people who you haven't even ever met before. So we walked in the door. It's a little crowded. They're kind of set in groups of people. And so they take the 5 of us, as well as this older couple, and we go and sit down. And we're talking to them, and they told us that they're there for their 37th anniversary. And they said that they met when they were 15, they got married when they were 18, and they were there for their 37 years of after getting married. And so we were talking a bit about kind of life plans and colleges and scholarships and getting settled in life. And the woman had told us that she was going back to UC to get a business degree or business management degree to kind of start earning a larger paycheck, so that way she'd be better off financially as well. And so at the end of the night, after we've all eaten, had a good time, the waitress is kind of talking to the table behind us, or behind where I was sitting. It was the table next to us, about the menu and everything. And she was taking kind of quite a long time. And so the guy who had told us earlier he was trying to go to the comedy show at the Funny Bone at a set time, he got up and pulled out his wallet, and he went to go. I just thought to pay for his bill so that way he could leave and make it to the show on time. And so he went, talked to her, paid, came back, said goodbye, and took his wife and left. And so then the 5 of us are sitting at the table, done with our food and everything, just kind of hanging out, waiting for the waitress to bring us our checks. And so she ends up walking over, and she's like, "So you know that they paid for your checks, right?" And we turn and look at her, and she's like, "Yeah, they paid for your checks." And considering that this restaurant is all about poking fun, we figured that she was joking, just kind of like to get us. And so we're just like, "Okay, really? Now give us our checks." And she turns back, it's like, "No, I'm being serious. They actually paid for your checks." And that was something that I was surprised by. This couple I never met before until we sat down at that table. We were probably sitting together for, I don't know, maybe close to an hour by the time that they ended up leaving. And they paid probably, at the time, or our meals in total probably cost about $30 across all of us, because we all got waters, and so that was free. One of the couples was sharing an entree, which was about $20. I got an appetizer for myself, which was about $10, and the other couple, they got an appetizer as well, but they had a coupon for a free appetizer with the purchase of an entree, so their appetizer was free. And I was surprised by that. They didn't even have to do that for us. We never asked for them to do it, and they just paid for our check. So that was really nice. Fortunately, later as we were walking around, we ran into them after their show. We got to shake their hand and thank them for what they did, and we talked a little bit more and had a great night. And so it all ended up well in the end. However, since they had paid for our check and we didn't have to pay for our food anymore. We all kind of had a lot of money that we planned on putting towards our food. So we ended up giving our waitress a $25 tip, combined out of the 5 of us. But considering that it is Dick's Last Resort, we stuck it in the water glass, flipped it upside down, and slid it onto the table. So if you've ever seen that before. Basically, you get one of the laminated menus. You put the money in the cup. You put the laminated menu over the cup, so that way it kind of creates a seal. And you just flip the cup over onto the table real quick, so that way the water will still stay inside the cup. And then you slip the menu out from under it really quick. And so then it's just on the table, upside down, glass of water, with the money in it. With all the water in it, so that way whenever you go to pick it up, it's just water everywhere. Now, it's kind of goes along with the style of the restaurant. We weren't being overly mean. However, it was kind of surprising to the people around us. They didn't ever think of that. But like, this entire restaurant's kind of not really a mess, but it's whatever. It's like whenever they're bringing straws to your table, they'll just kind of like throw a handful of straws at you, or if they bring you napkins, they'll just kind of throw a handful of napkins at you. So I mean, there's already like napkins and straws kind of across the floor, and they go around and sweep it up every once in a while. So it's kind of part of the restaurant. But we had some fun with it. I wanted to stay around and kind of see what her reaction was to the glass being upside down on the table. However, we didn't quite get to see that, considering that one of the buzzers came over and he immediately knew what to do. He slid a menu under the glass and flipped it back right side up again. So while I didn't get to see her reaction, it was still pretty interesting. So do you have anything to add? I've been talking a lot here.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I kind of was just thinking of as you were telling that story with the waitress and the couple paying for your meal. I don't know, I kind of find it interesting, well, not interesting, but it's kind of heartwarming just to think of kind of just trying to pass on kindness, even not necessarily thinking about how, if it's related to some specific thing that you've received or something that you've specifically done, but just kind of passing it on, just because, small little things can make someone's day, honestly. I don't know, from some of the friends I have, or with my significant other currently, just doing simple little things that really makes their day. And it's, you might not think about it, but when you just kind of watch, like once I think I might have gotten her just, a card or flowers or, something really small just to be kind of cute and sarcastically annoying at the same time. Yeah, I gave it to her for a day, but it honestly made her day a bit of her week, honestly. And you don't really realize it unless you specifically are around the person all the time, but it's something that'll kind of stick around in their mind for a while, just as a little backup, or not a backup, a little thought in the back of their head of just a nicety that happened to them. Yeah, I don't know.
Oh, wow. I don't know why that's happening.
I'm running some interference on here. I'm sorry about that.
It's fine. I'm sure it'll be solved later once equipment gets better. But yeah, it's those small things that people do towards others that is actually really surprising. There was a one story that I read online from the website Not Always Right. It's kind of one of the it's a site that kind of talks about like the funny stories and interactions that people have either in like workplaces or relationships or just with other people on day-to-day occurrences. And so this one woman was working at a coffee shop, and she said that this girl would come in who was like dressed up as like punk, like purple hair, leather jacket, piercings, skinny jeans, and typically the connotation behind that is that they're up to no good, or that they're a troublemaker or something like that. And so there people are kind of watching her just because it's what's kind of setting she's in. And she comes up to the counter and she gets 4 large coffees and 10 sandwiches. And while she's standing there waiting for her order to be prepared, she's kind of looking around the store, kind of looking at the tip jar, and kind of around back to the tip jar. And so the woman who was telling the story thought that she might be considering grabbing the tip jar and running out, because it kind of had a not necessarily a large amount of money in it, but volume-wise of like the bills stuck in there was kind of filling the thing up. And so whenever she was given her food, this woman dressed up as like a punk kind of asks the woman telling the story if the money in the tip jar actually went to the employees there. And so the woman who was serving her said, yeah, a lot of us are in college and the money goes straight toward into our pockets and helps us out a lot. And so she immediately pulls out 2 20s and sticks them in the tip jar and turns around and walks out. Now that's something that wouldn't necessarily be expected by somebody dressed like that in a public setting. And so after that, once kind of business kind of slowed down, which was only like after 2 more people, the woman telling the story went outside to go see where she went or if she could find her or anything, or the woman who had gotten these 10 sandwiches. And she said that she had found her just down the street giving the sandwiches to some homeless people that were on the corner, and the coffees to them as well. So just anybody is capable of passing on something. It's kind of surprising whenever we have all these stereotypes of people based on how they look. However, you can't really tell what somebody's character is like simply by looking at them. It's their actions that really define what kind of person they are.
And to add on to that bit about just how surprising the story is, would probably, in my opinion, one thing that kind of brings it out among other stories is the fact that it happened to someone in the services industry. They were a barista, or, there are stories of delivery drivers for pizza stores, or what you may have or have not. And yeah, it's just really surprising because it's been said time and time again, I can't really tell if there's any actual truth to it or not. I don't know if there's actually been studies on it, but the way people treat the service and, the way people treat others, like waitresses, delivery drivers, baristas, who, people working in the services industries, really reflects what kind of a person they are. And generally speaking, they're not really treated that well. They kind of have to rely on whatever tips they may be given to compensate for their pay. But on a contrasting yet positive note, there actually is a local restaurant that I've gone to recently. They do not require any sort of tipping. Well, not that tipping is legally required, but they specifically market themselves as not requiring or not having that social
I guess it's kind of like social norm where people expected to.
Yeah, that sort of expectancy for tipping, because they specifically try and make sure that they provide an appropriate salary for their waitresses and their workers. And that's kind of nice. It's really nice to see that in the area, considering America is one of the few countries that still has tipping as part of the major funding for waiters. And
and many people don't actually know it, but in jobs where you are receiving tips, they have a different minimum wage than other workers. For instance, like the minimum wage in our area is about $7.25 an hour. However, if you're in a job that accepts tips, then the law the law states that employers only have to pay their employees about $2.20 per hour. So they're making almost 25% of what other minimum wage workers are making, and just because they're receiving tips. And surprisingly, you can actually get very few tips per hour, and And you can actually get very few tips per hour that would allow I cannot get this out. The amount of tips that you get isn't always constant, and you could end up receiving less than the standard minimum wage, maybe only getting $4 or $5 an hour, which would make it very difficult for you to actually carry whatever you may have, such as insurance or car payments or other daily costs.
And then to add on that, like some jobs that rely on tips, like delivery drivers, they have minimal compensations for driving. They really do rely on their tips just to pay for the fuel that they're using to do their job and to pay for repairs.
Mm-hmm. I had an uncle who actually was working as a delivery driver because he was having, during a time period in his life, he was having difficulty finding a career path, so it was mainly my aunt that was providing for their family of four, or family of 4 kids. So there was my aunt, my uncle, as well as 4 cousins that were mainly living off of my aunt's salary working in a bank. Now, he worked as a delivery driver for a time, and he even said that the gas compensation that the pizza company gave him only paid for maybe half of his gas usage if he was lucky. The rest of his usage of fuel had to come from either his salary or the tips that he received. And it's kind of something that people don't really look at or consider, because they're kind of on the mindset of, well, they could either get a better job, or other people will tip, or they're making just as much money as somebody that stocks shelves in a grocery store. But that's not always the case. For instance, a delivery driver, they could even lose money for a day at work if they have to make a lot of deliveries and don't really work for very long or don't receive any tips. So it's definitely a field where people need to be kind of more open or more open-minded to those serving them, and to help out a little bit more, because you really don't know what they could be going through. It's just kind of something that people don't really think about very much, which really is actually a problem.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess that would give, again, that gleaming bit of truth on the way you treat people that are in those service industries and doing those jobs really can reflect a lot on what kind of a person you are and what kind of character you have.
Mm-hmm. Now, to kind of shift a little bit, I kind of want to talk also a little bit about charity organizations, and for that instance, because a lot of charities are working to kind of provide for the less fortunate who may not even have a house over or a roof over their heads. And while they all have a good intentions behind them, you can't really trust all of them, because a lot of those places, for instance, the Salvation Army, even only 12 cents from every dollar donated actually goes towards their cause. The rest of it goes into the pockets of corporate. And so one of the bits of advice that I've been given is, whenever there are the Salvation Army bell ringers out around Christmas time asking for money, one of the good things is just to tell them, no thank you, not today, something like that, because often the bell ringers are volunteers. They're not getting paid to be there. They probably don't even know how much of the donations received is going. And so just kind of be like, no thank you, or I don't support what the Salvation Army stands for, or something like that. Kind of respect them, because they're not the ones at fault. A lot of the times, if you're thinking of doing or donating to a charity organization, do a little bit of research and figure out what they really do and how much of their donations actually go towards something or towards their cause. Or if you want to make sure that 100% of your donation goes to the cause, find somebody that you can see obviously needs help and give it straight to them. For instance, maybe buying lunch for somebody living on the streets or something like that. While I was sitting in for dinner tonight in a restaurant, one of the ASPCA commercials came on with the pets, and I was sitting next to a grandfather with two of his grandkids, and he said that whenever he was young, he went out and he collected some money with a couple of his friends and bought 3 bicycles and went out and gave them to some homeless people on the streets as a direct donation to them to make sure that they get the full use out of it, which I thought was really nice of him. So.
And as always, you can always donate your own time and service as if you really want to make sure that you're assisting and benefiting someone. I mean, if you're giving up your own time to volunteer, you're seeing the direct effects of what you're giving up to help someone else.
Mm-hmm. I've volunteered at a soup kitchen before. I was cleaning dishes or running the dishwasher, making sure that everything got cleaned and run through and cycled. And you don't really fully understand what's going on and what people need until you're actually volunteering. So that would be something else. Find a soup kitchen or another charity organization and volunteer some of your time there. It doesn't have to be very long. It could just be even an evening. But it's impossible to understand what's really going on without experiencing it firsthand. So that's about it for this episode. Do you have anything else to add, Nathan? Any other topics that you'd like to bring up?
Not that I can think of. I mean, kindness, pass it on.
Yeah, kindness, pass it on. Buy somebody a dinner. Anybody, really. So yeah, shameless plug time. You can follow the show on Twitter at twitter.com/IntelIncomp. It's spelled INTELINCOMP. That's Twitter. The handle is at IntelIncomp. You can get updates about the show, upload schedules, maybe notifications should an episode be missed for some reason, and all that. Also, if you feel like supporting the show financially, you can head on over to Patreon at www.patreon.com/IntelIncomp and donate on a monthly basis there. Any help would be greatly appreciated. Again, that's patreon.com/IntelIncomp, spelled INTELINCOMP. Thanks for listening and have a good night.